Welcome back to the Hardware Unboxed podcast for episode 33. It's our pre-Computex episode because in just a couple of days, we will be flying out to Taiwan to cover the show. And before that, well, not really too much is happening, but we will give you our thoughts on what we expect to happen at Computex, a little preview of what we think you should be seeing in the next couple of weeks. We'll also discuss incoming tariffs on graphics cards into the United States that hopefully won't have too much of a negative impact on the graphics card market, but is probably unlikely. And consoles as well. Sony executives think that PC gamers might switch over to consoles. Not sure about that. We give our thoughts on it. So yeah, that's this week's episode. Hope you enjoy. Let's get into it. Steve, Computex, it's next week. I hear you've been doing some packing and preparation. Are you pumped? We leave in just a few days from now, so
yes, we do leave in a few days.
It's going to be good.
Yep, I am pumped. I'm very excited. I'm in the, as you say, packing stage at the moment, though it's less packing and more just finding all my crap. And it's always a bit of a wake-up call, like the amount of stuff I have. Balin's mind was a bit blown by it all. There's just, you open a box, then you find all this memory cards and spare batteries that you forgot that you packed the year before but didn't fully unpack them, so maybe I bought some more or something, I don't know. And then, there's a cord we can't find, for example. So we're looking for this specific cord. I love that. I think it's Rocket or Rocat Sova. The mechanical
it's like
lap keyboard thing.
That meant for people gaming on a couch.
Yeah, that thing comes in clutch in the hotels with the tiny desks. So I've been taking that every year for like 5-6 years now. Love it. So I found that. It's quite big. It was in one of the Hardware Unboxed cupboards. So got that. I found about 4 test systems in there that I haven't used for a long time. Full complete systems ready to go, like X 570 or I think it was an X79 and all that sort of stuff in there as well. So there's just computers and stuff. Anyway, I found the lap keyboard and mouse thing, but it has a specific custom-made USB/power cable that powers it and sends all the communication, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, wasn't with it. So I have been going to all the corners and crevices of the studio that normally aren't visited, and I've been finding all manner of things. So basically it turned into a hunt for the Sova cable, and really now it's just become, wow, we really need to do a lot of organization and cleaning up. I thought it was pretty organized and cleaned up in here, but it's sort of organized in a way of, here's this stuff, we'll organize it. We probably don't need it and won't come back to it, but it's there. And then you forget about it for 2 years. You come back and I found rewritable DVDs and things like that, like drives, that I've been keeping for 15 plus years. And some of them were brand new, like in box, that I just never got around to using or for whatever reason didn't use or didn't need. And I'm like, you know what I mean? It's hard to bring yourself to throw out new things.
I feel like everyone's got a box of just random stuff. I'm looking around. I've got boxes everywhere of just I'll use that at some point. Let's put it in the assorted items box.
Yeah.
And then it makes it so difficult to find anything. And then also I'll probably never use any of that stuff. But I mean, with that little keyboard thing, I guess that shows why they should probably just use a standardized USB-C cable or something, just normal stuff.
Yeah, to be fair, it is quite old, so they probably made do with what they had available. But yeah, I know what you mean. I will have it. I have it. I will find it, Tim. But yeah, I've spent the last probably 3 hours sorting things like, radiators that I never used, water blocks that I never used, or did use and cleaned up and put away. The stuff I found is crazy. So some of it I'm like, oh, that's handy. I wish I knew I had that. I'll put that with, the thermal pastes. So next time I run out of thermal paste, I'll have these 4 tubes I just found. Stuff like that. I guess because I've moved studio twice, you end up with 4 thermal paste bins instead of 1. So when you run out, you think you've run out, but you forgot about the other 3 boxes of them you had. So yeah, I've been doing some much needed sorting and cleaning, and I've got so many 120 millimeter and 140 millimeter fans. But again, I can't throw them out like they work. So I've got I think 3 or 4 like 60-liter tubs just stacked full of them. So I guess where I'm going with, I found about 30 liters of fans as well. Just, there's a fan. There's 2 fans. There's 3.
And what we need going to Computex is just to fill our suitcases with fans. We don't need any of the relevant camera stuff or tripods or anything, just fans and radiators and all that stuff.
I can't wait for the situation to arise now where Tim's like, do you have a 120 millimeter fan by any chance?
Well, if the aircon at the hotel's not great, then maybe we will need all those fans to keep us cool, because it's pretty hot and humid there, especially at this time of year.
Yep.
But apart from that, I think I'll stick to the camera gear, and you can bring all the fans and radiators that we might need.
Yeah, well, hey, you never know. What's the saying? Better to have them and not need them than need them and not have them. And I'm sure that applies to a copious amount of 120 millimeter fans and their accompanying radiators. So,
nice.
But anyway, yeah. So just well into that. And hopefully I'll find that cable and we'll be away. But I've packed, 2 GH6s, 8 batteries to go with those, 4 chargers, card readers. I think we've got about 6 different ways of recording audio. So hopefully one of them works.
Nice.
And, the list goes on and on and on. So I'll be trying to split that up and delegate between Chris and Balin's bag to get things in there, so I don't have to do it all. Because we spoke last time on the podcast about our bomb bag.
Yeah, we're not going to go through security with any of those. We're taking more people than we took that time when it was just us 2 going. So we've got plenty of luggage space. Probably way too much luggage space, to be fair. Especially because Balin was telling me before this podcast about how he was going to buy a new gimbal for the camera to use at Computex, and in the past couple of years I've brought my gimbal to use, but he wants a lighter one because apparently despite going to the gym he can't hold a 1.5 kilo gimbal for hours upon end. So
sustained power, those muscles, lactic acid, all that sort of stuff, it's a problem.
I don't know how it works because I don't ever bother exercising, but apparently when you exercise it doesn't just make you good at holding things for a long period of time. So he's gone and bought that, so I probably won't need to bring that. So, yeah, my suitcase is just going to have all my crap just thrown around when we're in the plane. So I'm going to need to find some padding and stuff to put in there, I reckon.
What gimbal do you have? I know you sort of Ronin.
I have a DJI Ronin S, but I think he was looking at a newer version of that's like lighter, more compact. It honestly looks like a good product. So
well, I'm buying it, of course. So he told me he wants that. So I'm like, all right, fine. I said, find out what Tim's got. Anyway, so Yep, we can move on.
I think it's like half the weight, so it's pretty good saving for something like that. Anyway, let's get into this week's topics, which we're kind of in this holding period ahead of Computex where both of us are just like, let's get to Computex, let's get talking about things. But before then, it's kind of like, not too much has been happening, but there are some interesting topics to talk about. So first of all, I wanted to talk about what a Sony executive has recently said, which I think is kind of a little silly. So Sony's, I think it's soon-to-be CEO is just about to be promoted to the head of the PlayStation business, Herman Holst, so hopefully I'm pronouncing that name right, has mentioned some things about their strategy for gaming across PlayStation and PC games, because obviously these days you can get a lot of PlayStation/Sony games on PC. Just this year we've seen Ghost of Tsushima, we've seen Horizon Forbidden West launch, and then obviously like Last of Us, those are Sony's titles. And they've basically said that for their online multiplayer live service games, those will be available on PC and PlayStation 5 on day one. So that would be like your Helldivers 2 example, release them on both platforms. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
For single-player games, their strategy appears to be the same as what they've been doing for a while now, which is launch it on PlayStation first, and then a couple of years later, release it on PC. And the thinking there, at least as this guy has explained it, is that they're trying to entice PC gamers to play sequels to those titles on the PlayStation console. So, for example, with like Ghost of Tsushima, for example, I guess their thinking is we'll give PC gamers that release like 2 or 3 years after it comes out, then a year later when the sequel's available, they're trying to convince those people to switch from PC to PlayStation, which from everything that I know about PC gamers just doesn't happen. Like PC gamers, you'd struggle to get them to switch from Steam to Epic Games. So getting them to buy a generally inferior piece of hardware
Mhm.
is probably not going to work. But I don't know. What do you think that's going to work?
No, I'm surprised that that is a strategy or that anyone thinks that would work because of, reasons you've talked about. And, obviously I'm not a console gamer. I was once upon a time when I was a kid. Grew up with, the
Yeah,
Nintendos and stuff and loved my consoles back then. But as soon as I, built my own PC and got into PC gaming, I never looked back at console gaming. And that was well over 20 years ago now. So, but it's kind of like, I don't know, there's always these debates like Apple, Android, OS stuff. And with this, it's even more of a divide though, because it's not like, people argue about whether you have an iPhone or an Android. And I'm sure I'm going to get shot down here, but generally speaking, they kind of do the same thing. They go about achieving the exact same experience in a slightly different way. Like I don't think there's a huge divide between what they do. And I guess from someone who's looking at this from the outside, they're like, well, PC gaming, like gaming PCs play these games and then consoles play these games. Like they're both playing these games at the same thing, which I guess is fair enough. But they go about it in such different ways and they're just such different devices and platforms that I never find myself even comparing console gaming with PC gaming because they might as well be alien to one another, in my opinion. I don't think there's, or at least the way I look at it, the way I would go about it, I'm not in a position where I'm like, do I buy the new PlayStation or do I get a PC? Like, I'm sure there's some people that have, had that train of thought. But for me, it's just like, well, I want to do more on my computer, right? I want to, use it as a computer. And I know that you can use the consoles to do various tasks these days that, it's not very PC-like, but it can do more than just game, am I right? Like
you can
it's got basic
play movies.
Yeah, it's like, what would you call it? Akin to like smart TV functionality, maybe.
You wouldn't want to be web browsing on your PlayStation 5. I think it can probably do it, but
yeah, it's less than ideal. So I don't want to say that you can't do those kind of PC related tasks and then someone say, well, you can if you're willing to go cross-eyed and throw your remote through the TV after 2 hours of trying.
Sure.
But my point is, if I was in the market to buy a console for gaming, that's really what I'd be doing, right? I want to play console games. I'm happy to use the controller. That's sort of the style of gameplay I prefer. Whereas if I'm a PC gamer, I'm just looking at probably, I don't know if I want to say more diverse range of gaming, but I just prefer first-person shooters, for example, with a keyboard and mouse. But you're also possibly looking at doing things beyond just PC gaming, which...
Yeah, for sure.
So and what does that, entail? Well, basically anything and everything. What do you use your computer for? So they're just two different things.
Yeah, I find it hard to believe that you're going to be enticing too many PC gamers over to play console games in this sort of way. Like, as well, like on a PlayStation, there's not as many games as what you can play on PC. Like PC has you can play pretty much anything apart from some exclusive console games on PC, whereas, the PlayStation 5 is restricted to its group of titles that have been ported to that console. Whereas on Steam, it's like you get all your current games or old games, most indie games are on there as well. And then, as you say, you can use your PC for pretty much anything else. So to say that like, PC gamers are going to be, I don't know, aching to play the next Sony game to the point where they're going to buy a console just to do that. I'm sure some people will do that, but I think that most people have been perfectly fine to wait for those titles. Like the amount of people that have, they've waited for Horizon Forbidden. Like you could have played Horizon Zero Dawn on PC, which was released a few years after it came out on PlayStation. You could have bought a PlayStation 5 to play the sequel 2 years ago, but the numbers for the sequel on PC have been pretty good. Like quite a few people seem to have been playing it, and I don't know exactly what the sales numbers have been, but the reception was pretty good. So I don't know. It doesn't really. It seems like PC gamers are willing to wait for those sorts of things.
That's definitely true. And I think just reality, it does. this strategy doesn't align with the reality that we see, at least me personal, and anecdotal evidence or whatever. But I know quite a few people who were console gamers who ended up being PC gamers. Some of them quite recently, they decided, I want to try this game with 4K, high frame rates, high quality settings, and they had a bit of money to splash. So they buy a high gaming PC, and they're blown away by how much better the gaming PC is. And they're kind of like, you're done then, right? It's like,
that's what I think.
It's like anything, you get a better thing that you think that you didn't really need or was unnecessary, and then quickly you adjust to that as being your reality, and going back's difficult. And Balin, our video editor, for example, before he worked for Harbour Unboxed, he was a full-time console gamer. I think I don't know what I think he's got an Xbox, maybe a PlayStation.
I think he's definitely got a PS5, because we've talked about playing like Spider-Man 2 and stuff like that.
He might even have both. I know he was very into it, and he used to play even like the competitive shooters. He used to play Call of Duty and stuff like that, Warzone, on his console, which I get a lot of people do that. It's still to me like what?
It's pretty hard on a controller.
Well, I mean, there's some really good gamers. I'm not saying you're trash if you do that by any means. There's definitely some gamers on console that would beat me at Fortnite like they're crazy. They've got aim assists and all those little training wheel type things. I'll spit some fire there. It's true though. It
is true.
They have serious help there. Anyway, what was I saying? So Balin has his consoles, and then he started working for Harbour Unboxed, and we got him a gaming PC, which we built live on the channel. And he's like, I barely, like occasionally with his girlfriend, he'll turn it on and play casually, but he's just like, his main entertainment gaming system now is his PC because it's so much better. So I guess my point is, I know quite a few people that I can call on their experience and say, look, this person was a console gamer. They heard that PC was better. They moved to PC and they agreed PC was better. So I've got people transitioning that way. What I have no evidence of or no examples of is people who were PC gamers to whatever degree that then either primarily or totally just dumped the PC platform or PC gaming and went to console. There's not a single example I can think of where that ever happened.
Yeah, I don't think it's that common. And maybe this Herman Holst fellow believes that maybe just a few gamers will a few games will be played on PlayStation instead of all games. Like, people will have their primary system as a PC, and then they'll just play the Sony exclusives on a PlayStation console. But I honestly can't see that being, as I said, the main thing that happens. I think PC gamers will wait to play it on the console on the gaming device they prefer, their PC, over playing it earlier on the PlayStation. And I think it's firstly because this has been the situation for years now. PC gamers, for some titles, Grand Theft Auto comes to mind, those sort of games, have always had to wait for some games, and some people are fine doing that. Secondly, people have waited, even if it's on PC, to get it on Steam instead of on the Epic Game Store. So if gamers aren't even willing to use Epic Games, they're probably not going to be willing to buy an entire PlayStation console. And thirdly, there's so many PC games that it's not like on a PlayStation, if you're buying that for exclusive games, there's only a couple of those released every year. So you probably want to get the latest game straight away because it's the new thing. That's the thing to play at the moment. But on PC, it's like, I don't know. I feel like most people's backlogs on Steam are so crazy that waiting a year or 2 years to play a game that's, it's a single player game. Maybe you don't really need to, level up to get good at the game so you're not left behind like on a live service game. I feel like people just do that. Like, it's okay, I'm fine to wait a year for Horizon to come onto PC because I'll just play some other game first. And then in a year's time, I'll have time. I'll just play it then.
Yeah, so essentially the PC gamers who are going over to console to play exclusives, which is what Balin still does, were already console gamers. They just happen to be so ingrained in gaming that they gamed across platforms. So they had a good gaming PC and they wanted to do the lot. But I don't think people who only have time or money for one, they typically pick one or the other. And if they're on PC, I don't think too many of them. We hear from people in the comment section that go, PC gaming sucks now. GPUs are too expensive. I might as well just buy a console, or I'm going to buy a console. which, fair enough. But how many of them are just spitting the dummy and saying that, and how many of them actually didn't upgrade their PC, dumped their PC and just left it for, office type tasks and then bought a console? There will be some that did that.
I don't think so.
But not enough to even, it wouldn't be significant. It'd be very much the minority.
Yeah. And I think there's never been a lot of price crossover between consoles and PC. Like, there's been times when people have attempted to build the $500 PC to see whether it's as good as a console or whatever. But I feel like most people, it's sort of like the expectation that once you move over to PC gaming, it costs more than a console to build the PC.
Yep.
So it's not really like you just wouldn't move to a PC if you were worried about spending more than $500. It's just probably not going to be the right move as a gamer to do that, just simply because, consoles are quite affordable. So they do make sense for budget type, people who don't want to go all out on the PC ecosystem. But again, like, once you have your PC set up, then it's always going to be that choice of like, oh, do I spend $500 on a new GPU or do I buy the new console? And in a lot of cases, provided that your system is reasonable to some degree, the GPU upgrade is going to be just as good as buying like a PS5. I mean, it depends on the exact time that you're looking at, because earlier in the console cycle, that's less true. And then later in the console cycle, the PC graphics cards are way better at that sort of price. So it does depend, of course. But we'll see how that strategy goes for them, because, I don't reckon it's going to lead to too much.
No, well, PCs are the superior way of playing the games. I mean, we're not arguing about that, are we? And
I hope not.
And generally, when someone goes to the superior option, it doesn't matter what that is in life, just the superior way of doing things. There's very little incentive or desire to go back to, the less, the inferior option is there. So,
yeah, that's right. And that's why PC gaming has been growing so much over the years, is that as more and more people come to figure out what PC gaming does and the benefits of it and what else you can use a PC for, because as you've said, they're not just gaming devices, that ecosystem has been growing, whereas consoles, I don't know, the numbers seem to suggest that, the PS5 is selling at about the same rate as a PS4. So I would imagine that's a lot of people who owned a PS4 replacing it with a PS5. I don't know whether the total market is growing, whereas on PC, generally over the last few years, at least, again, I'm not an analyst, so I'm not 100% sure on those numbers, but my understanding is that it's increased on PC quite a bit over that time. So,
I mean, if you're a mad keen gamer and you're gaming on console, and if you've got the money to do so, I mean, buy a mid-range to high-end gaming PC.
It'll change your life.
The experience is so much better. But as with all sort of financial purchases, I don't know what that means, but, when you spend money, okay? Whenever you're spending money, be careful, because I have friends and I know people who tend to go all in on things, and they'll spend way more money than they should have to get the high-end experience. And then they want to, maintain having a high-end PC, and it becomes quite a burden. And it is difficult to go back, right?
Needs some maintenance.
I mean, you're a good example with your car. You've got a car that you can just, it's not even a thought to you, your car, right? You've just bought it. Whatever
it's
goes.
A piece of crap. Yeah. No, but it's a piece of crap.
But it works, right? It costs you.
It works.
It costs you nothing initially. You are not a car guy, and you got a cheap car. But if you turned around and bought yourself a really nice car with all of the technology, all of the features, which, you'd be like, heated seats, that's wanky. You don't need heated seats, that's dumb. But then you get them in winter and you're like, I kind of don't mind the heated seats. And then you get used to all the features the car has. And I'm like, now, Tim, go back to your very old car. You would do it, but you'd be reluctant.
I'd cry a little bit. There'd be some tears.
So it's true of anything, right? You've got to be careful with where you spend your money and what you get, because once you get something that's bigger and better, and it genuinely is bigger and better, it is tough to go back. So, I mean, I don't even know why I'm saying this, but it's like a spend within your means thing. Mid-range PCs are very good. And I guess where I'm going with this is, it sort of comes back to the recent Zen 3 thing we did, where we heavily recommended the Ryzen 5 5600X because it was a bang-in value CPU that gamed really well. And we were like, look, if you can afford the 8-core model, which is like $100-something, I think it was $150 more, or might have been more than that. But anyway, it was more expensive. We said, great CPU if you can afford it, but don't necessarily push the budget to that, and absolutely don't buy the 12 and 16 core CPUs. And believe it or not, there were people that were recommending them for gamers. Buy the better value sweet spot stuff because you can just upgrade more often, right?
Yep.
And that's what we'd advocate for, is buying the sweet spot hardware without the future-proofing angle as much, unless it's blatantly obvious, and just upgrade more regularly than, the amount of friends I've had that convinces themselves, I've got a tax return, I'll spend all of it on my computer, and they go all in on the absolute, and they're still running like 2080s to this day because they can't afford to upgrade, so they're waiting for like the next generation. Whereas if they hadn't got the mid-range for that generation, they could have upgraded and they'd have a better PC today. But anyway, I don't know what I'm talking about, Tim. Let's move on.
Well, in talk of upgrading PCs, there's been some news lately that US tariffs on graphics cards imported from China are likely to be reintroduced or come back into effect next month. So, again, we're not in the US, so we're not 100% up with all the different policies and laws and all that stuff over there.
Tim's a Trump man, though.
Oh, God, I have to edit that out
now. Sorry. I'll try not to do that again.
Oh, well, we'll see what happens with that section. But anyway, Steve said some stuff that may or may not have just been edited out. Anyway, so the US reintroducing a 25% import duty on various electronic products. So these apparently include graphics cards, motherboards, and various other components that would typically be made in China. Apparently like robot vacuum cleaners and those sorts of things are impacted as well. But because some graphics cards, motherboards, those things are largely manufactured in China, even if the GPU die, for example, is manufactured at TSMC in Taiwan, then it might get sent to China to be put onto the board, which then makes it count as being made in China. So,
God, there's so many political landmines there, by the way, with what you just said.
Well, let's not get into that stuff.
So what you're saying is this may not make graphics cards and motherboards great again.
Yeah. I think this is going to make graphics cards more expensive. And the risk that this has
that's great news.
Is that, well, I know, but you make a 25% tariff on US graphics cards, so suddenly, NVIDIA comes out with their new GPU series and they're like, oh, sorry guys, we've had to make these 25% more expensive due to tariffs, but we're also, for all the people where the tariffs don't apply, they're also 25% more expensive. So you Europeans and Australians and stuff, too bad. We're going to roll you guys.
I think we already have a 10 or 15% tariff on NVIDIA products, so it's probably going to be more like probably a 35% tariff for us.
I would say so. But that's always the risk with these things, is they can use this as an excuse to raise prices when otherwise they might not have. I mean, I don't know whether for sure this will come in and affect all graphics cards, or whether it's just going to be some products, or maybe they'll get exemptions, or the law will be overturned or something. I don't know. But it doesn't bode well for graphics card prices, I don't think.
No, and that's the last thing people need to hear with a new generation just around the corner. Because as you say, there's the tariffs, and there's a war, and there's inflation, and now you're paying $6,000 for a graphics card. But I mean, they can't go too crazy, as we've talked about before, because RTX 4080 was a good example where that card just did not sell well at all, because and we predicted this, and people said we were mad because we're YouTubers and therefore we're disconnected from reality when we say that people aren't going to pay $1,200 for a 4080. They're just going to go the full hog and spend $1,600. And people were accusing us of saying, $400, not nothing, which, we agree with. But also, typically speaking, if someone's wanting the best of the best and they're willing to spend over $1,000, they're not going to stop at $1,200 to get the best of the best, which is what NVIDIA is well and truly aware of. They'll go $1,600. So those people all bought 4090s, and then the 4080s didn't sell that well because they were really people who were, you know, I can probably go like $800, and then maybe they stretched it to get that, or they just, there will also be people who, look at the landscape and say $1,600 absurd. I'm willing to go to $1,200. So I'm not saying those people don't exist at all, but I'm saying the majority of people who are willing to blow past $1,000, $1,200, $1,600, whatever. And there is also that halo product thing, right? Like the best of the best. People like to say they've got the best of the best rather than, I've got the second best. I didn't go for the best of the best. I couldn't afford it. I spent a lot of money, but I didn't get the best of the best.
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, like they can't raise the prices of GPUs by 25% and expect them to sell. Like they just won't sell. Like if they released the new generation of products, right, and it's like a 5070, the current 4070 price was, what is it? It launched $600.
Yeah, $600,
it dropped down to $550. So let's say that, in current economic conditions, you probably wouldn't want to raise your 70 tier product with the, or the product with the generally expected performance improvement over a 4070, because they could rename it to something else, right? But that type of product, they can't just make that 25% more expensive and they expect to get sales, because then it's a $750 product. It's not. It used to be $500 just a few years ago. Now you're asking for $750 for it. Like people would then go to the tier lower product, which is then maybe no performance improvement over the 4070, which itself wasn't exactly the biggest upgrade over cards before. So then you run into this situation where the lineup makes no sense anymore. So no one is going to be interested in buying it at all. So someone along those lines is going to have to eat the 25%. And I don't think consumers at the moment, with their sentiment on buying graphics cards, are going to be like, yep, all good. I will happily pay the 25% tariff to get my new GPU. They're just going to not buy a graphics card again.
Well, I mean, it's concerning, because does that even matter? How concerned is NVIDIA about the GeForce graphics cards selling to gamers with the way things are at the moment? So gamers don't have that much buying power at the moment. So we've been saying for a long time now that it seems like they've gone for this TikTok strategy where, you get a good performance upgrade, improvement in cost per frame, and then the next generation comes along and it's a Turing generation, and you get, hey, look, we've got these new software-based features that take advantage of our architecture, and we'll do things like DLSS and ray tracing and now frame generation. And they don't really move the needle forward in terms of cost per frame. Then another 2 years goes by and you get something like the GeForce 30 series, which does really improve cost per frame, but then that series gets wiped out by cryptocurrency mining. GeForce 40 series, hey, frame generation, but very little improvement in terms of outright performance, cost per frame, VRAM, all that sort of stuff. I expect the RTX 50 series to improve performance based on that trend, and probably give you more VRAM at each tier as well. So just be outright better products that are worth buying. But we have that whole AI thing. So is that going to result in another GeForce 30 series scenario where we do get everything we wanted, but then the price or availability becomes a problem? I don't know. I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely cause for concern. It was hard to assess the impact of the tariffs previously, because this is a reintroduction of a tariff that did apparently occur earlier. But I believe those tariffs were during the period of, crazy pricing during that whole period. I can't quite remember.
Was it just high-end products or was it all products?
I honestly can't remember, and I don't know whether this will affect all products, to be fair. I think if it did affect all products, it's a pretty silly tariff. I'm not obviously, really an expert in those sorts of areas, but generally I would have thought that this sort of tariff would be to encourage manufacturing to move away from China to some other location. Probably the US is what they're aiming for, right? But you can't just make a motherboard or graphics card production plant overnight to suddenly spin up, making the products in the US rather than in China. It's probably going to take a while to get that sort of thing moved across. And in the meantime, who is it that usually suffers from those things? It's the consumers who want to buy the products that have to deal with the fallout effects from that. So it's not ideal.
It's such a mafia type move, isn't it? Like to just, oh, we're just going to charge this money, Yeah. Anyway, whatever.
Yeah. It's not an ideal situation, but we'll see how that goes, and hopefully it won't have too much of an impact for people trying to buy graphics cards. But again, we'll have to wait and see, because the tariffs are supposed to come into effect in the middle of next month. So yeah, after that, we'll be able to see what the impacts are. Just want to interject here with a quick update to this podcast episode before I hit the publish button. We originally recorded this episode several days ago, where we were discussing the impending tariffs for various different PC components manufactured in China, which was likely to affect graphics cards and motherboards. 25% price increases were being talked about in a couple of weeks from now, so around the middle of June 2024. What has since come to light, according to PC Mag discussing this with the US trade departments and those sorts of things, is that there actually will be some exemptions specifically for PC components, which is really great news for those that were worrying about potential price increases for graphics cards and motherboards. So specifically, just reading this information here, that there will be some exemptions for products defined as printed circuit assemblies. So specifically, printed circuit assemblies constituting unfinished logic boards. So that would be interpreted to mean motherboards, or at least that's the interpretation that has been given. And then printed circuit assemblies for rendering images onto computer screens, graphics processing modules. I mean, that's effectively a graphics card. So those two product categories are going to be exempted from the impending tariffs until May 31st of 2025. So effectively pushing back those tariffs by another year. The reason being given for pushing back those tariffs is that they basically need more time to find alternate sources of these products outside of China, to support shifting sourcing out of China, and of course, availability of alternative products that are not manufactured in China is pretty limited, effectively non-existent. So what we were talking about earlier in the podcast about how you can't just spin up motherboard and graphics card factories overnight, meaning that the tariffs are pretty silly. That is basically also the reasoning that is being given for extending exclusions for certain products. So that is great news for people that are interested in graphics cards, motherboards in the next year or so. We are expecting, of course, new motherboard series, new graphics card series to be released within the next year. So yeah, the initial launches, the initial pricing of those things should be unaffected. So still going to leave in what we've just been talking about so you can get our original thoughts on that. But a lot of what we're talking about probably won't actually apply until at least May 31st of 2025. So yeah, that's just a brief update from this one. Wanted to make sure this podcast was accurate, up to date, since that information has come to light. And yeah, on to the rest of the episode. I also want to talk about Computex, what we're expecting from the show, what should be shown there to get people interested and motivated to see what's going to be coming out. So most companies are going to be doing something around Computex this year. AMD and Intel are officially at the show, so they'll be having keynote presentations that are linked to Computex. NVIDIA is also sort of at the show. They don't have a booth presence or linked to Computex, but have a keynote ahead of Computex. There's other companies, those sorts of companies if you really care about mobile products, and then obviously MSI, Asus, Gigabyte, and all the peripheral manufacturers, the people that make cases, power supplies, all of those guys are going to be there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, what are you expecting from Computex this year? I guess we'll start with the main guys, the Intel, AMD, NVIDIA. What are you expecting to see at Computex?
Well, from NVIDIA, I'm just expecting a whole heap of talk about AI, and more AI.
100%. They did that last year.
Yep. So it'll be just a rehash of that, essentially. From Intel, I'm expecting them to, in some capacity, announce the next generation CPUs. I'm not exactly sure to what degree, but I am expecting to see new Intel motherboards, Z890 and B860 and all that sort of stuff. So that's probably going to be the Intel stuff, just the next generation platform. I'm not sure if there'll be, I probably don't expect any pricing or stuff like that about CPUs, not necessarily any performance stuff either, but I mean, we'll have to wait and
Yeah.
see, but definitely some Arrow Lake stuff I expect. And the main thing I'm almost certain we'll see is the motherboards from the likes of MSI, ASRox, and
Yeah,
so on
I
and so
think so.
forth. Uh,
It sounds like the mobile parts, the Lunar Lake series, I think it's called, the next generation of mobile parts. Now that we don't cover mobile parts, I don't quite remember everything anymore.
mhm.
But I believe those are rumored to be coming earlier than the desktop parts, but they're not yet announced. So I would imagine that probably a large focus for them will be the mobile stuff. Lunar Lake, obviously, new AI NPUs and those sorts of things to fit in with Microsoft's latest announcements for Windows. And then, yeah, as you say, hopefully Arrow Lake, the desktop stuff will come in and be shown off in some capacity as well. So, yeah, I don't think it'll be as much of a full announcement though. So, as you say, not like, here's the lineup, here's the performance, but like more along the lines of, hey, we've a new platform's coming later this year. Get hyped for it, get hyped for Intel, things like that.
Yep, no, I agree with that. And then I think from AMD, it'll probably be a fair bit more substantial on what's announced. That's my expectation. So I'm absolutely expecting Zen 5 to be announced and the different CPU SKUs announced. Probably again, no pricing. I mean, potentially pricing, but I would expect specifications to be detailed. And we're expecting, based on the rumors, 6, 8, 12, and 16 core parts again. So sort of an update of what we've currently got. And again, there'll be a heap of 800 series motherboards because they're skipping the 700. They're
Apparently, yeah.
So that's what I've heard. So you'll get like a B850 range and stuff like that. So I'm expecting again all of those motherboards to be on display. We'll better get footage of those and talk about specifications probably for our coverage.
Yeah, that seems to be the most likely. I think as far as the release schedule goes, I think that it's most likely that we will see Zen 5 quite significantly before Arrow Lake, for example. So whether that's July, August, but I'm expecting it to be in the months following Computex for the actual release of those products, as opposed to later in the year. Whereas Arrow Lake, I think, is more likely to come in sort of the Q4, the typical time that Intel releases CPUs. So that's going to play into obviously announcements in terms of how much detail there's going to be on each of those products. And as I said, I think Lunar Lake, the laptop parts from Intel, will be on show a bit because they are launching apparently a little earlier than that. And obviously there'll be AMD's mobile parts as well. There's been lots of talk of various new Strix products with beefier GPUs. Again, it's not really something that we cover at Hardware Unboxed anymore, but if you are interested in those big APU type products where they're apparently putting in a much more significant GPU into them, I think that will be shown as well. And then hopefully, I don't know whether we'll get a full launch or at least some details of RDNA 4, but something graphics related. It does seem like it's going to be a bigger show from AMD. But again, as far as like RDNA 4, I wouldn't say there's been too many concrete leaks or things about the specific products to this point, which a week out from, well, it's actually even just a few days out from things being talked about is probably not that likely if we're not hearing too much about it at this point, but I guess you never know.
I think if anything, it'll be like a final slide to their presentation, like teasing its existence essentially. That would be my expectation there. And then as far as like other products at the show, we're always expecting to see some new interesting cases, cooling solutions.
Yeah, we should see motherboards with the new Cam 2 design for memory as opposed to the standard DIMM slot. So that'll be interesting to have a look at. There's been some leaks and things of that. Obviously, second half of the year monitors will probably be on show as well. Probably some of those have been announced already, but we'll be able to get a look at them and those sorts of things. But yeah, storage devices. There's all sorts of stuff for the show. It's really interesting usually.
Yep. Yeah, so that's one of the fun parts about Computex, isn't it? Walking around to the different vendors and seeing what new up-and-coming things they have or concepts and stuff like that. That's always a lot of fun. So we'll definitely see some wild stuff. We always do every single year.
So yeah, pretty keen for this show. I think it should be bigger, more releases, more announcements, more cool things to see than last year. When we were at Computex last year, it felt kind of like a lot of companies were sort of hedging their bets as to whether Computex would return to what it used to be prior to COVID, because there was that period there where Computex wasn't being run. So, all these vendors would be coming out and they're just sort of wondering, will we be getting new products or not getting new products? Are people actually going to come to the show or not come to the show? And so there was a few new things, but a lot of companies didn't really align anything with Computex. But this year, just hearing from some of the companies and obviously the big, hardware vendors, seems like they're a bit more back into the whole Computex swing of things, getting things
Yeah,
aligned with that, which makes it more exciting in general, I think.
yeah, a lot more exciting. And I think it's probably going to be the first really good Computex trade show in probably about 5 years. So
Yeah.
so that's cool. Can't wait.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what I want to learn. Whether or not we learn this on or off the record, I'm not sure. But I will be interested to know whether AMD will get RDNA 4 out before the GeForce 50 series, because as I mentioned in the latest Q&A series, it's very un-NVIDIA-like to let AMD go first with those products. I think AMD should be doing everything they can to launch first, but they tend not to.
Mhm.
So be interesting to learn exactly what's been going on there with their sort of launches.
Well, I fully expect you to get no confirmation on that, but good luck either way. I think, yeah, both of them will be if I had to guess, both will be arriving at very similar time frames in Q4. So that's my prediction.
I
Yeah.
think that's a pretty safe prediction, which it'll actually be quite interesting because GeForce 50 series is most likely to be high-end products launched first, so like 5090, 5080 type products. And then the rumors are suggesting RDNA 4 will not have high-end products. So if they both launch around the same time, that should create quite a lot of range of products, from mid-range to high-end products that are new and interesting. And then obviously Intel Battlemage GPUs are supposed to be released at some point. Feels like we've heard virtually nothing about that. So if they come to the party at some point,
Could be good.
interesting things happening there.
Well,
you never know, really.
Yeah, definitely a lot more exciting release from Intel as well if they can push performance forward a reasonable amount, because the drivers are certainly in a much better place than they were, and they continue to get better, it seems, every week. So yeah, that would be a much more substantial release than what we got from the A750 and A770, plus the lower end parts as well.
Yeah, that's right. And I think there's going to be interest in mid-range and lower tier parts, just with the sort of way things are at the moment, where it's a bit more difficult to justify higher tier GPUs at the moment. So I think if they can really nail that sort of launch, it'll be very interesting. I don't know whether they'll be teasing that or talking about it too much at Computex. I imagine the focus will be more on AI stuff. So again, if you're talking about AI, how much are they going to be talking about their discrete GPUs? Not sure. But yeah, if that happens at some point, they'll be, at the very least, it'll be interesting to see what a second generation of those products looks like. Because the improvements they've made over the first generation has been pretty good. So I did want to wrap up our little Computex preview just by, I want to get your expectations on Zen 5. What are you...
Oh, God.
Like, this is just like pure speculation, not based on anything, because there's been I've seen everything from wild IPC claims of like 40%, 50% improvements to virtually no IPC improvements of like 5%. So it seems pretty clear that the CPU core count will not be increasing to any significant degree, just the standard 6 up to 16 core designs. But I guess what do you expect, and what do you want to happen as well?
Oh, well. What I expect to happen would be much closer to 5% than 40%, that's for sure. Or even, 20% would be pretty wild. I think that would be very specific cherry-picked workloads. I'd be expecting and hoping for somewhere in the 10 to 20% range, but no idea. As you say, the rumors are all over the place, so there isn't too much to go on. Tough to say there, but I would guess more around the 10% mark than anything, substantially higher than that.
I guess one thing that I'd be thinking of is, do you expect or think that like a Zen 5 non-X3D part, would you expect that to beat a 7800 X3D? Or do you think it'll be, because the last couple of releases has been the new generation non-X3D parts have been around the performance of the previous X3D. So Yeah,
Yeah, I
do you
don't.
reckon anything's going to happen there?
Wow. Again, that would be a substantial performance increase. So that is not my expectation at all. That would be pretty incredible, really. From one generation to the next on the same socket, that would be an incredible performance achievement. I'm certainly not expecting that. I'm not saying it's not possible; it won't happen, but that is certainly not my expectation. That'd be very high expectations there. So a lot of possibilities there. As for stuff like core count, I'm not too fussed about core count. You know, we talk about core count, especially when it comes to gaming being largely irrelevant. It comes down to how actually powerful the cores are. The fact that we've got, especially if they're hitting the same sort of price tags. So if we're getting a $200 6-core Zen 5 CPU, I'm pretty happy with that. It doesn't necessarily need to be an 8-core part. Again, depending on the performance uplift we get. So if it ends up being 20% faster, then that's huge. I mean, you've basically mitigated the core count difference to an 8-core CPU of Zen 4 anyway. But a 20% performance uplift will see the 6-core Zen 5 part pretty well slay all of the non-3D Vcache Zen 4 parts, regardless of core count. Because, again,
For gaming, right?
For gaming. Yeah, we're talking gaming here. Then beyond gaming, then core count, becomes really important. And the more cores, typically the better. But again, if they've got a 16-core part, like what does the 750X sell for these days? Like $500 or something? For
something around there.
For that kind of CPU, that is remarkably cheap. So it stands to reason that before too long, a 16-core Zen 5 CPU will be down around that price as well, because AMD seems to be very aggressive in cutting prices and enticing people to buy those parts.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what their marketing angle will be if, for example, they don't launch X3D parts with non-X3D parts, and I don't expect that they will. The last few launches have obviously they've come out 6 months, a year later with the X3D model as sort of like, now we've got new processors, so buy these now instead of the old models, right?
Which is annoying, but I get it.
It is annoying, but it'll be interesting, if they can't get the non-X3D Zen 5 parts to beat a 7800 X3D, then their focus in their marketing slides is going to be very interesting, whether they go down the gaming route, sort of promote that, because if it falls short of their previous best CPU, then they can't exactly call that the new fastest gaming processor, that's usually an angle that they like to go down. So yeah, if they sort of fall short of that, then are they going to just focus on, I don't know, productivity, performance, or those sorts of things? It'd be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious thing would be just to compare them to the previous generation non-3D parts and say that the 9600 is this much faster than the 7600.
That's right. They're going to be 9000 series, aren't they, supposedly?
I believe so. Which I don't mind. It's annoying, and they sort of paint themselves in that corner, because you end up with Zen 4 parts with 8000 series branding, and then it's a bit of a mess. Yeah, I don't know why they have to do that, but
So yeah, we'll see what happens there on the Zen 5 front. There's a few different interesting angles to see there, but I think a lot of the show will be, at least from the vendors, because AMD, Intel, those companies don't really have. I think Intel has a booth. I don't think AMD does, but usually they're talking about all sorts of other stuff at their booths. It's usually you have to go to the MSI, Asus,
that's right,
Gigabyte booths to see new motherboards and those sorts of things. And it'd be interesting to see the sorts of features that they can put in to justify the new, what was it going to be? X870 or something?
Yeah.
Is that theoretically what it's going to be?
I mean, I think I said this on the podcast. Obviously, with the Intel motherboards, it's hey, new socket, which that takes care of itself. On the AM5 side, I expect it to be more, these boards support Zen 5 CPUs natively out of the box. So if you're buying a new Zen 5 CPU and you're upgrading your whole platform and you're building a new PC, just get an 800 series board because it's guaranteed to work out of the box. And the previous 600 series boards, they will work, but out of the box, you might have to wait a few months before stock's updated and stuff like that. So, but yeah, as for new features and things like that, I mean, new Wi-Fi standards and stuff like that can be supported. Typically, that's done more so at the high mid-range to high end.
Mm.
But we'll see.
So I'm certainly keen for Computex. It obviously all kicks off in just a couple of days after you're listening to this podcast, because we'll be putting it out on a Friday, and then the show basically starts just a few days after that. In AMD's, Nvidia's event is on the Sunday,
Mhm.
and the AMD event is on the Monday. So within a few days, we'll have quite a few bits and pieces of information about those things, and expect to see a lot of stuff related to AI. I think the number of mentions of AI in these presentations will be absolutely off the charts.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
it'll be very interesting to give our thoughts on that in our content next week. So, we'll take a break and we'll come back and talk about what's been happening in our boring lives. All right, Steve, we're back. What's been happening?
What's been happening? Not a lot, to be perfectly honest. I don't really have. I mowed the lawns once. That went well.
Yes, I did that.
Yep.
Nice.
And while I was mowing my lawns, I thought, gee, I should probably sharpen the blades on my mower soon. So I had that thought. I didn't do it. I just thought that I should probably do that soon. So, yep. No, that went well. I planted a couple of tree ferns with my wife. She acquired them from a friend that didn't want them anymore. So they're kind of interesting because you just like chainsaw them off at the base because they don't grow from their roots. They grow from the top. So I had to drill some holes with the augers, chuck them in. They look pretty happy. So we'll see if they survive or not. But so far, so good. So I did a little bit of gardening. But other than that, it's been more just cleaning up. I did a lot of cleaning up in the shed, sorting things out. Realized I had way too much stuff. So did that. Then I've had the same realization in the studio this morning when I've been finding just endless buckets of bolts and screws and standoffs and cable ties and SD cards and batteries and so on and so forth. So that's a problem. But yeah, really, it's just been about sort of getting everything organized for leaving this weekend. Just making sure we have everything, all of our sponsorship stuff sorted out, all of our flights are booked, hotels sorted. So hopefully, with all the effort I've put in this week, everything will go smoothly for us. That's really been my focus, not doing too much else.
Yeah, it's pretty smooth last year. Things tended to go pretty well, especially the addition of Balin coming along with us for the first time. He was obviously very pumped to see all the show and the new things. And if it's kind of your first time going to a trade show like that, it's pretty overwhelming what it's actually like. Like, I remember what I thought it would, before the first time I went, I remember thinking what it would be like. And then when you go there, it's like way more, like the booths are a lot more impressive than I was thinking they would be. And there's a lot more things there. And obviously, if it's your first time in Taiwan, then that can be a bit of a, overwhelming sort of thing as well. So it'll be Balin's second time going there. We're bringing along a fourth member who'll be their first time going to Computex, helping us out with a few various different tasks. So that'll be interesting. Their experience should be pretty good, and it should be pretty full on. But the more times that you go, the more casual and sort of you get into the routine. You kind of know what to expect, right? Like we know where the hotel is, we know where things are, we know what we've got to do. So, and this year we haven't gone crazy planning to do too many things. We've got a very manageable schedule of things that we think we can achieve and do. So that's going to make it, pretty casual. But it's been pretty similar over here in terms of just like making sure I've got all my things sorted, my passport's up to date, insurance is good to go. Just, scoping out the area on Google Maps, figuring out like, if we're busy, where can we go to get food and stuff, sorting out phones when we get there, making sure those work, making sure I've got everything, because obviously if I miss something, then that's probably going to be not great. So
potentially a pain.
Yeah. So yeah,
exactly. Really excited to get over and get into it. And we're staying at a different hotel, but it's closer and more convenient. So there are a couple of changes from last year, but
that's true.
I think they'll all go pretty smoothly. Fingers crossed anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the new hotel is going to be interesting because I think it wasn't built last year. Was that right? Or
I think so.
Ready to
I don't
go?
know. I know it's a new hotel, so
right.
And I don't remember seeing it last year at all. So it's 30-second walk or something from Nangang Convention Hall, which is where it is.
we've just doxed ourselves in case anyone wants to rock up and say hello.
Well, feel free. I mean, you'll probably find Balin drinking something downstairs, so you can just walk up and chat to him. He'll always be on call for a chat, so you can hit up Balin at any time. I'll put him out there. But no, it's gonna be good. I think there's quite a few hotels now. There's definitely more than one, Tim. So,
okay,
yeah, hopefully
we're safe.
Yeah, well, we probably end up being the third or fourth one you try, but A for effort
Nice.
there, I guess. What else? Oh, we'll probably do a podcast as well while we're over there, won't we?
Yeah, probably whether we bank a couple at the show or just do one there. I'm not sure, to be honest, but there will be some podcast coverage there that will be at least filming then and then, releasing at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we'll slot that into the schedule. So that should be very doable and very possible, especially because we fly out a couple of days after the show finishes.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that there's just going to be, we won't be able to go back to the show floor. So we have to figure out something to do. So podcasting is probably going to be it, among a few other things. So yeah, should be good. Should be keen to go. So yeah, smooth sailing. Hopefully, fingers crossed, everything goes well, and we can get some exciting coverage. But apart from that, honestly, haven't really been doing too much else. I watched my team destroy West Coast on the weekend, the Adelaide Crows. That was nice. So that was refreshing, but unfortunately I won't be able to watch the Crows play for the next couple of weeks because they play while I'll be busy doing things. So
you can watch
that's
it.
Unfortunate.
You can watch it on a VPN. I plan on watching at least one of the. Well, I think I've only got one game that'll be on while we're away, because the second game will be the day after we return. So that's good for me.
Right. So you've gotten lucky because the Crows play on Saturday afternoon when I'll have to drive to the airport.
Right.
And then the following week they play Thursday night. So we'll be busy.
You'll miss that.
Not that I really care too much. But
yeah. Well, I don't know who they've got on, but yeah, my team won as well, so that was good. So we had a rare weekend where both of our teams win. So that was good. And you managed to beat the team we lost to the previous week somehow.
Yeah, we beat them by nearly 100, so that was good.
Yeah, I mean, football, don't try and work out how that goes. Who are you? Oh, so you've got the Hawks. That'll be an interesting game. And then you've got, where are we? Oh, Richmond. Okay, so that should be a win.
Yeah, Richmond should be an easy scalp, you would hope. But yeah, the Hawthorn game, not sure. Who's Melbourne playing?
The next game you'll be able to watch will be versus Sydney.
Yeah, fun times.
So Melbourne has the Dockers while we're at that'll be the Sunday at about 11 o'clock in the morning or 11 a.m.
Okay.
So
that's doable. I'll watch that.
Yeah, I'll have my breakfast at the hotel, then I'll go back up to the room, watch the game. That should be good fun. Then we have Collingwood. So that'll be interesting.
That'll be tough.
Yeah, that's the day after I get back. So that's probably going to ruin my vibe for the week. And then after that we have a bye, so I'll be able to relax. So that'll be good. But anyway, yeah.
So yeah, I don't think there's too much else really to talk about at the moment because, as I sort of said towards the start of this episode, the period before Computex is always very slow as everything just gets towards being just pushed to that week. So yeah, hopefully you'll find some interesting content on Hardware Unbox and Monitor Unbox over the next week or so as we're at the show and covering things. And if there's anything that you want us to cover in particular, or you see things that you think are interesting from other people and you want us to check them out, then yeah, just let us know and we'll see what's there. But yeah, we'll just be floating around the booths and the suites and things to see what's happening with all the companies, and also trying to get another Noctua hoodie if they make those again, because every year they seem to have some pretty good stuff. So I'm keen for that too. So yeah, I think that pretty much does it for the Hardware Unbox podcast for this week. As I said, we'll be back for the next couple of weeks, probably from Computex, and we'll do some sort of weird outdoor show like I think we did a Q&A last year. So
yeah, we'll
try and get that up and running again. And that does it. So yeah, if you want to sign up and get the video feed, obviously we've got our YouTube channel, the Hardware Unbox podcast, the audio feeds, Spotify, all those places. Same as always, pretty typical stuff there. And yeah, thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next one.